What happened to the game you bought? I bought the intellectual property for Legends of Valor, and I just haven't had time to set up the game development company. I was planning on actually getting it started this year in the summertime, but then my brother decided to retire, as did my dad, and we're starting a biotech company together. So the slot of time that I had for game development, unfortunately, I've had to spend that a little differently. That said, it's still there, and I do have conversations about every 2 weeks about it with various people. And there's actually a game development university program in France. My CTO Ramon, he used to be in game development. In fact, he created Pokemon Go before Pokemon Go existed. It was his PhD dissertation. So he's affiliated with a French research group, and we're going to do something kind of like Crypto Kitties, and we're calling it Crypto Bison because my ranch in Wyoming has bison. So I'll do something there, and I still have intentions I beautiful plans for all the stuff for the game company. So Legends of Valor is kind of like an RPG, and we're going to do it like Skyrim, so like an Elder Scrolls game. And there's a whole plot. I have over 86 pages of game design collateral. So I drew stuff and I wrote out the plot and I have the NPCs. And so I have a really good idea of what I want to do there. And I think it's a beautiful spiritual successor to the original game, Legends of Valor, but modernized in the ways you would expect. And I even talked with a guy who used to work with Gary Gygax, and he gave some great advice as well. The second thing I'd like to do is resurrect the Gold Box engine, which was a game engine for original Dungeons and Dragons games, not even second edition like Baldur's Gate, but actually first edition. And it ran in the Forgotten Realms. I'd like to update that, modernize it, make it retro, put in some really cool mechanics with it, and then put it into the Pathfinder game system and embed it in the Pathfinder game world because the licensing there is significantly easier. And the third thing I'd like to do in that game company is actually start licensing IP in the Warhammer 40K universe and run a series of games there. Dawn of War was really well done, and I think there's a great market for RTSs in Warhammer, and there's a great marketplace for things like Eisenhorn, but done even at a grander scale. And Games Workshop seems to be quite amenable to a pretty permissive license if you don't go with the Rabute Gilliman standard world stuff. So all of that, of course, with gamification and microtransactions and tokenomics and so forth. So anything we would do, we would try to connect it to the Cardano blockchain and issue that. But that's a separate company. And also experimental game mechanics. One of the reasons why we're talking to this French university is that I'd like to explore things like hypergeometry. Like there's a great game called Hyperbolica, which does that. I'd highly recommend you guys look at it. AI-driven game development, for example, Event Zero, where you can actually interface with a terminal and talk to an intelligent agent, and it can reply real time to your dialogue. That is some great stuff. And it'd be really cool to see what we can use GPT-3 for that. And other cool game design concepts like variability of time, variability of gravity, different atmospheric conditions. So physics emulation, but then it's connected to a magic system or connected to other such things. So those experimental mechanics, it would be nice to have some game R&D that's done. It's not necessarily connected to a particular game, but it becomes a capability that can then be embedded into either the RTS portfolio or let's say the Warhammer 40K portfolio. So I have it all there. I have money set aside for it, like, depending on how much Biden takes from me. But we'll get around to it at some point. I'm also doing a lot in aquaponics. I just had a great conversation with the largest aquaponics guy in Puerto Rico, and I'll be flying to Puerto Rico likely in June to have a conversation and tour his whole facility. And I might end up building a 100,000 square foot aquaponics facility in Wyoming, depending upon market conditions, and have tilapia and all this other stuff, and build a power plant next to it and so forth. So yeah, I do a lot of that stuff on the side in addition to all the Cardano stuff.